So in this second video, I'm going to talk about another cause célèbre of protests, advocacy and demonstrations, not only in Australia but also around the world, namely the rights of the Palestinians and their struggle against Israel's occupation of their territory. And that's going to be with particular reference to the subject which is also the subject of the reading this week by Ilan Pappé, namely the international call for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel as a form of non-violent protest action in favour of the rights of the Palestinians. So to begin with, let me just show you a map. There's a map, you may have seen this before, and it's actually incomplete in this version, but this is the way it fits on the slide. It's called the map of the amazing disappearing Palestine. And the green areas show the areas available for Palestinians to live in through the history since the catastrophe, so-called, that is the Nakba, in which thousands of Palestinians were driven from their homes at the formation of the State of Israel in 1948. And you can see how the land available for Palestinians has been shrunken and reticulated ever since. That's only in 1999, so it's intensified much further since then. And indeed, as I record this, there is already concern being expressed at military movements which seem to imply that Israel is about to encircle Palestinian East Jerusalem still further than it already has. That's that's a depiction of Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory, and it's expanded greatly its settlements on Palestinian land, and they're illegal under international humanitarian law because the Fourth Geneva Convention says an occupying power must not transfer any portion of its population onto the territory it occupies. Now, the problem with that is that the responsibility for upholding such things and the responsibility for ensuring the inadmissibility of territory seized by force should really devolve onto the international community, because these laws, these precepts, are not the possessions of particular parties to particular conflicts. They belong to all of us. So all of our governments should be doing something about it. And of course, there's a widespread feeling that governments, certainly including the Australian government, don't do enough about it. And so therefore, an equally strong feeling that the onus to take action in respect of these abuses instead devolves onto the rest of us in civil society. And that's really the governing logic of the call for the boycott of Israel. Let's just have a look at a couple of the other slides here. This is an illustration from the last military attack on Gaza, and we know something about the nature of that military action because of groups like Breaking the Silence, which is a group of Israeli veterans who effectively blew the whistle on orders they were given, which appeared to be indiscriminate, and an indiscriminate attack harming civilians or putting civilians in harm's way would also be a war crime. But here's the keynote, really. At the same time, a couple of years ago, saw the latest attempt by the administration in Washington to broker talks between Israelis and Palestinians. And at the end of those, the chief Palestinian negotiator, Saeb Erekat, said, Israel refuses to negotiate sincerely because as long as the status quo is so beneficial to it, Israel has no interest in the solution. Without firm signals from the international community, Netanyahu's occupation and colonization policies are incentivized. So that's really a very close match to the situation as described in the John Paul Lederach quote from the first video about the unjust situation continuing because those benefiting from it have no interest in raising it or regarding it as a problem. And that's really where advocacy, therefore, has to come in. And it does come in, of course, on behalf of the Palestinians in many places, including by themselves, of course, but also in many other countries. And one of the forms it takes is just I'll put the slides up. You can look at that for yourselves. But let's skip on now to this, the specifics now of the PACB and BDS cause. PACB is the Palestinian Campaign for the Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel. and it's part of the call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It stems from a World Court judgment in 2004, an indicative judgment that Israel's separation fence or apartheid wall, as the Palestinians call it, which gobbled up lots more Palestinian land, was in fact illegal, and the failure of governments to do anything about it, and therefore it's an appeal, as I say, to civil society to take up the baton. Among its achievements, shall we say, is to get an endorsement from Professor Stephen Hawking, one of the world's most famous academics. Lots of associations, learned associations in places like the United States, like the American Studies Association, have adopted academic boycott policies. South Africa, the Palestinian University of Al-Quds, lots of singers, including Lauryn Hill, whom I've mentioned there, have cancelled concerts in Israel in response to the call. And there's been lots of divestment from Israel, including by Veolia and G4, which are two major international companies. So the PACB and BDS calls have enjoyed considerable success in their own terms as contributions to, I suppose, communicating a sense to Israeli society at large that business as usual with the rest of the world cannot very well continue as long as these abuses and these war crimes remain effectively unaddressed. There's lots of lip service paid to expressions of concern and pious hopes that another round of negotiations will bring the violence to an end and so forth. But as years roll by and nothing substantive on the ground looks likely to change, of course people want to look to other recourses, other tactics, other measures in order to exert the kind of political agency for a change of policy on Israel's part in respect of those policies. So let's just move on to the next one, which is, of course, to bring this right home to the University of Sydney and Peace and Conflict Studies, both as CPACs when we were a centre, and now also as a department, has been supporters of Sydney Staff for BDS. Sydney Staff for BDS. And one of the things it's concentrated on has been the funded fellowship schemes linking Sydney with two Israeli universities, the Hebrew University and the Technion University. And for various reasons, it is argued that those schemes really have the aim of not really kind of promoting excellence in research, but instead using the reputation of academic research to promote and normalize relations with Israel, and therefore alleviating pressure from the international community for a change of those policies. Both universities are directly implicated in the occupation, notably on the part of the Technion, the Samuel Neiman report, or the Neiman report on public diplomacy, which actually recommends promoting links with universities as a way to change the subject in the international community where Israel is concerned. So it raises the question, is the University of Sydney being used for this public diplomacy in things like an Israel research event it organised, for example? So these are the kind of concerns which kind of bring it home. And it's that sense, I think, which we probably first met a couple of weeks ago when we were looking at issues of international peace and security. One key motivating factor in peace perspectives and peace action in general, I think, is this sense that the world we meet is a world which is at least partly of our own making. And therefore it's our own part in bringing about peace, it's our own behaviour that needs to be examined. We need to sort out our own backyard, if you like, before going out and telling others what to do. And that's really been why people who want to advocate for the rights of the Palestinians have wanted to look in more detail at the actions of the University of Sydney itself. Now, of course, there is a very wide spectrum of views on these topics, and may I encourage you to read widely by people of all different points of view and discuss them among yourselves and with me as well, and do the readings and see what you think. But that's it for these videos for this week on peace, advocacy and protest.